Yeah, I'm trying to minimalize all my shit right now. I'm actually selling all of my synths because I'm just like,
really?
Yeah, I'm just done with hardware. Like, or I'm
sell me your rack.
Yeah, you want it?
Yeah,
sure.
$30 and a Lambo ride.
All right. Now we're getting somewhere.
Welcome to the Mr. Bill podcast. I'm Bill's manager, Anand Harsh. I'm also editor-in-chief of theunce.com. Some of you may have noticed that we're moving to one episode a week as things start to open up and Bill gets busier. We'll have this strange thing called tour dates to announce on subsequent episodes, though it's not going to be anything like before, I'll tell you that much. Not that anyone's going to be complaining. I'd give anything to see a third-tier jam band in a church basement with 6 kids smoking cloves and Jinkos right about now. We've been thrilled with our run of guests lately. Today's episode features an old friend of Bill's. Please welcome metal god Misha Mansoor of the progressive act Periphery. The band has released 4 full-length albums over the past decade, countless EPs and singles, played with everyone from Meshuggah and the Deftones to the Dillinger Escape Plan and Dream Theater. Mansoor himself started as a solo act, Bulb, and is a talented producer on top of his 6-string skills, having produced the self-titled debut album From Animals as Leaders. The guys talk fast cars and real estate, mixing EDM and metal, and Bill selling his modular rig to Misha. Super fun episode. We're doing super weird things in the Patreon, as subscribers will find out in the next week. Trying to keep things fun and fresh for our subs while the world literally burns outside. Patrons get early access to episodes, bonus content, super secret merch bundles, Discord roles, and more. Visit patreon.com/MrBillsTunes to subscribe. Finally, please head over to MrBillsTunes.com to sign up to become a hardcore Ableton-ear. You get full access to Bill's project files and tutorials, access to nearly 30 sample packs, and so much more. All right, here's Bill's chat with Misha Mansoor.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you are listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're 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 listening to the Mr. Bill podcast. Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the
Okay, yeah, I'm reading his second book now too. So it's this dude called Russell Brunson. He's like basically some marketing expert guru guy who's made like fucking shit tons of money he started out making a ton of money by selling these DVDs on how to make potato guns. So basically, like, he went online. This was in, I don't know, the early 2000s, before like YouTube was a big thing or whatever. Like when getting 10,000 views on a video was considered like viral. And he basically like went on all these forums, figured out how to make potato guns. Then he got just a handheld phone camera, I guess, or like a DSLR or some shit, and went to Home Depot and like filmed himself buying all the PVC pipe and all the glue and like all that shit, and like made a video of himself like how to make a potato gun, and then just sold it online with like really good marketing on like how to build a potato gun, and all he was selling was this garbage fucking recorded video on how to do a thing. And he made a bunch of money that way, and then he was like, oh yeah, I could actually like figure this shit out. And the way he figured it all out was by subscribing to every single junk mail thing he could. So his parents would get like one letter in the mail, and he'd get like piles of just junk mail basically.
Right.
And he'd go through it all and like read it and try and figure out what they were doing with the marketing to emotionally manipulate people to buy shit basically. And then he kind of like reverse engineered it all, and like he'd just stay up all night watching infomercials and stuff like that. So he's kind of like just this marketing dude. And yeah,
that's awesome. I want to read. I want to read or listen to that now.
It's pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm like 3/4 through his second book now, so I've been learning a lot about marketing.
What did you pick up? What's the main things that you've picked up?
That you have to figure out where somebody is on the buying chain, whether or not they're cold, warm, or hot. Mm-hmm. So basically, you need to figure out whether or not they're desire aware or problem aware or product aware. Right. And then depending on where they are on that chain, you need to market to them differently. Yeah. And one thing that I didn't know, which is kind of crazy, is the difference between qualifying subscribers from buyers. So, for instance, I do this shit all the time, right? Well, like you'll sign up for something like Hulu, and they'll ask you to put your credit card information in for like a 14-day trial, and they'll be like, oh, and then we'll charge you after the trial, right? And I always thought that this was just like a lazy man's tax. Like you put your credit card information in, and then they're basically preying on people who forget to cancel
that's what
their thing,
I thought
right?
too.
Yeah, it's not actually for that reason. The reason they do that is to qualify a buyer from a subscriber. So they're like, all right, this guy has put his credit card information in. He's now a buyer, and we'll market to him as such, because they're like, he's willing to put the credit card information in. That means he's willing to buy, you know?
Interesting. So so you just separate the two. You find some sort of step that separates the two.
Yeah, like you know what a funnel is, right? Like a marketing funnel. Yeah, so so you'll have like two different kinds of funnels. One for subscribers that you've qualified as subscribers, and a subscriber is just someone who's willing to give you their email address, basically, or willing to like you on social media. And then you have a whole different funnel for buyers.
Yeah, and like on the marketing end, this is where we have like super specialized people who, basically, design our funnels and they optimize them. And, it's all very data driven at this point. They give you all these platforms, give you so much in the way of analytics to where like, you can audit this stuff fairly easily now. And if you know what you're doing, this is where I'd say the art form comes in. It's something that I don't know how to do because one, it's like its own full-time job if you want to do it really well, and two, it's like it's an art form. There's people who know how to do it, but there's people who execute it better than others. But like, it's like made me gain a lot of respect for people in that field, because there's some people who are so brilliant at that stuff. It's kind of insane, and they become like very specialized in like doing like email funnels and things like that, which will just print money if you do it right. You'll have the exact same product, and that's the interesting thing is you'll have the same product. But I remember like when I worked sales, like my first like real job was sales. Worked at Radio Shack on commission, And I remember like my manager there taught me a really important lesson, which has always stuck. And I took well to sales, and I always enjoyed it. But like I remember he was saying, it's not about convincing people to buy stuff. It's just about knowing the chances are you have a product that solves some problem that they have or they don't even realize they have. So the more you know about the products, the more you can have the conversation where because it would always be like, oh, do you want a new phone? We'd always make a lot of money with new phones, or selling phones, right? That's how you made the most money. So they'd be like, no, I'm not interested, And then there was like a series of questions that you could ask, like, does your phone this? Do you have a problem with this? And almost universally, people would have problems with X, Y, and Z. And these were things that the cell phone companies were very aware of. So they were fixing these things. So then the newest models would be like, well, actually, now we have this or that. So now you don't have to deal with this or that. And they'd be like, oh, really? And then once you get one of those, then you've got them hooked. And now you can start selling to them. And it's not about convincing them to buy something they don't want, because they can just return it the next day. So you shouldn't waste your time with trying to convince someone that they need something. That happened a few times. I was like, oh, wow, that was a waste of time. I wasted like an hour convincing this person that they needed this thing. They didn't. And then they went and returned it, and I didn't make any money. So it's more about like identifying like solutions for people's problems and just being super aware of stuff. So all this stuff is basically kind of doing that at scale, and that's why you say like separating the subscribers from the buyers. Basically look at who's browsing and who's ready to buy, and then you can market to them differently. For one of them, you're like, hey, are you aware? And for the other one, it's like, all right, let's close this deal, and get some accessories on it too. So it's pretty interesting stuff. Sounds like I should. I love learning about this stuff. So I feel like you can never learn too much about this stuff. So, oh, cat, look at that.
Yes, my pet cat YouTube. I mean, I kind of started reading about it because like I talked to you about this the other day. I'm like putting a sample pack out. So I wanted to sort of like market it properly. But also I'm just like curious from a like consumer's perspective, like what's happening. And from what I've noticed is like I've learned a bunch of shit that happens to me, like for instance putting the credit card details thing in that I wasn't aware of before. Like I wasn't aware that this was a part of a marketing sequence. I thought it was just like a logistical thing, right? Like putting credit card details in.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then there's things that are obviously marketing, right? Like creating a sense of urgency for webinars and shit. Like you'll sign up to like a webinar thing, and then they'll like have some email that pings you, being like, "We're waiting for you right now in the webinar."
Oh, damn! I don't know about that whole side of things. That's pretty nuts. But you know, you have a subscriber. We like none of my companies do a subscriber thing really. It's technically my coffee company does, but it's not an aggressive thing, and it's a very small coffee company right now. So everything else is like pretty much just direct sales. But once you have like the subscriber model, then things change, and I feel like the subscriber model is a really smart thing if you can maintain it. Like it's good that you're doing it, but there obviously has to be different ways to market to new customers and to maintain existing customers. So probably good to, I'll probably pick your brain about that stuff down the line, you know?
Yeah, the subscriber thing is cool. I've been doing it for a long time. And pretty much I've just like, whatever I just do in my day-to-day life, I try and figure out like how I can turn it into a piece of content to just keep giving to people, right? So for instance, I stream on Twitch all the time. Mm-hmm. So one thing I offer to my subscribers, or rather one thing that I like withhold from the general public, is the streams that I do on Twitch. I don't leave them up as like rewatchable things. I instead just put them on my website so only subscribers can watch them.
Interesting.
And you know, if I like write a new song, I'll release the project file on my website, or if I make a new tutorial or something, and there's like a element of that tutorial, like a rack that I used in there or some samples that I used in there, I'll make those only available to subscribers and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of cool. The reason I originally did that is because when I first started doing music, like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, I was like, fuck, how do you turn this into a wage? Because I was like kind of looking at the numbers and I was like, how do you like turn music sales into a wage? You really have to be selling a lot of music, and then you kind of need to be putting shit out like a lot. You'd have to be putting out like at least an album a year or something. Otherwise, like you'll get these giant fluctuations in income, right?
You're getting into this dangerous conversation that always seems to find its way into every podcast I talk about like the difficulty of making money in this scene. And dude, you're at a massive advantage because, you know, it's basically just you. And I don't know if you have a manager or business manager or anything like that, you know, or partners or whatever, they may take a cut, but it's not like splitting it 5 ways, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So I had Jordan Rudess on the podcast the other day from Dream Theater, and he was talking about how they will, like, Dream Theater will go do a tour in like Asia or something like that. It'll be like a 30 or 50 day tour or something insane, and they'll have to do like 14 or so shows before they even break even and start making any money. Absolutely. And then once they break even, they have to split the money 5 ways plus pay like crew and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the breakdown of how it looks for Periphery, and this is why internationally it's so hard for us to be profitable, is just the cost. You know, like the thing, people love to look at the guarantees and like the ticket prices and all, and they're like, oh, they're making this much, and like completely disregard like things like costs and payouts and taxes and things like that. So the way it'll work is like, yeah, there'll be a big take for a show, but it costs a lot to put that show on because the bus costs a lot, and you have to have a bus because that's the only thing that can take a trailer that's big enough to have your production, and you have to have production because you can't charge that much and just, you know, play a show with no production whatsoever. And as you up in production, you have to maintain it. It's very tough to go backwards, you know? So now, yes, you are charging more, but it's basically all going into production. We'll be very lucky. On a US tour, we can have it to where like our guarantees will like basically have us breaking even, and then we can start making money off merch. But with everything else, like anything that's international, like we're starting in the red and we're hoping to break even with merch and maybe make a little bit on top, you know? And so there is that point where it's like, okay, you know, we finally hit break even today, like halfway through a tour, so 2/3 of the way through the tour. If we do at all, you know, there's some tours where we're just in the red and we're like, okay, well, this was an investment for next time. But if we do have a take, you know, so they'll look like a sum of money, and then it's like, okay, now you gotta pay out your business manager and your manager, and your booking agent's already taken his cut. And then after that, our business manager does like up to a 40% tax holdback. So even if let's say we have a really good take and we manage to take away $10,000 a piece, we only see $6,000 of that.
The other crazy cost that I learned about the other day, because I mean we share the same business manager now, right, Mark?
Oh yeah. Oh, so Scribner's. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
he's my business manager now.
He's been my guy for a while. He's the best.
Yeah, he's awesome. But yeah, one thing I realized the other day, he's like, yeah, if you're going to be touring a lot, you probably want to get like some insurance, right? Like some liability insurance and some.
Oh, you don't have insurance?
Well, I've never needed it because I mean it's just me, right? And I'm not traveling around, and I still don't need it. And we had this conversation, and we came to the conclusion that I probably don't need it because it's like super low risk for me. But I thought about it, and I thought about it in the sense of like bands, for instance, like Periphery. And it's just an insane cost because, I mean, obviously you want to have all your gear protected in case something gets stolen or broken or anything like that. And then on top of that, it's like liability insurance because you guys are like headlining a lot of shows, right? So if you're headlining the show and you're also kind of behaving as the promoter of the show to some degree, then a lot of the liability falls on you if somebody gets hurt at that show, right?
It's one of these things where like this is a very litigious country and there's a lot of gray areas. Nothing's happened so far. Nothing happens to most bands, but it's like, ultimately, you look at it as like a relatively small cost. Bless you, I think. Or damn your soul to hell.
So all the fires here have been like causing the air to be horrible, so my throat is fucked up.
Yeah, stop setting the country on fire, dude. That last mixtape I heard was that. No, but like the liability thing is interesting because ultimately, if someone chooses to sue you, they can make your life pretty miserable. It's a very expensive prospect. So it's just protections against someone who wants to be difficult. I think if someone gets hurt, perhaps if you like cause someone injury, like, I don't know, like if Spencer were to do something dumb, like say, hey, everyone go beat up that guy and he gets beat up, and then has medical bills. Yeah, sure. Like that's your fault. Obviously he would never do anything like that. But like, I'd say that would be maybe a clear cut example, but like short of that, sometimes people get injured in the pit. They'll be like, oh, well, there was a mosh pit because it was a heavy part. It's like, well, don't go in the mosh pit. You absolutely don't have to be anywhere near it.
Yeah. That's the other thing with the electronic music scene is there's never a mosh pit.
You just get trampled.
Not at an electronic music show.
What's that thing? What's that side? I see him headbanging like the barricades. What is that?
Rail riding? Yeah, it's called riding the rail.
Do they do that at your shows?
Sometimes. I mean, not so much because I don't play rhythm. That's more of like a thing that people do at a rhythm show, which is basically like very quarter note heavy dubstep.
Right. So you could just headbang.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Bass Nectar shows. Like people were doing that a lot at Bass Nectar's shows.
Oh, interesting.
Dude, did you hear what happened? He resigned from his career.
Why?
Because he got outed as being a statutory rapist. Like
really?
He had like this thing where he'd just like constantly be sleeping with 17-year-old women, and then like a bunch of evidence came out about that, and then he was
That's so weird. That's so weird to me, by the way, the 17-year-old thing, because it's like, it must be a mental thing, because it's like you wouldn't look that different if you're just going for the 18-year-old. Just go for the 18-year-old, Like, why is that? Like, that must be something where he's like, oh, I love that you're 17. I'm going to actively chase that. I don't know,
Yeah, I think it's something to do with that. It's like some taboo shit that's like...
Maybe. Who knows how the brain works? We're weird. But like, that sucks. That sucks all around, I guess. So he had to quit music?
Well, he didn't. Yeah, I don't know. He chose to quit music. I don't know if he had. If he didn't, I don't know what would happen though. Like
they don't have Ableton in prison.
No, they don't. Well, maybe they do. Maybe they do in Bass Nectar prison. Like
maybe they do it. I bet in Sweden they have Ableton in prison, so that like Vard can make music. By the way, before we go too far down this path, I did want to ask you, just going on the marketing thing. Did you watch that Social Dilemma documentary?
No, but somebody told me last night while I was streaming that I should.
Yeah. I saw it was ironically of all things trending on Netflix. And I saw people talking about it. So I was like, okay, I'll just watch like the first 5 minutes of this. And then I ended up watching the whole thing. It's really fascinating stuff. It's stuff you probably know or suspected, but at least for me, maybe I was just ignorant to some of the like of how deep this goes. And it's like kind of like all stuff that you knew that the tools were there, but like, it's just crazy. It's all data. It's like just the granularity of the data collection and what they can do with it and what they do with it. And it's interesting because, you know, we are taking advantage of this model, but we are also, you know, victims. We're both profiting and victims of this modle. And it's an interesting thing. I don't entirely know how I feel about it. And I also don't entirely know what would change. I'd love to have a discussion with you after you see it, because I'd be really curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I know a little bit about this already. Like, I know, for instance, Facebook can like watch where your cursor is on the screen with like a heat map and see how like long you're hovering over certain parts of the screen and stuff like that. And then
but I knew that because we do that with our websites. Like, right, that's pretty common stuff. More like how Instagram, like little things like the fact that like Instagram refreshes and you swipe down was not an accident. It was basically they were studying addictive behaviors, and they're like, oh, it can basically emulate the same feeling that you get from like a slot machine in a casino. And there were active efforts to make social media as addictive as possible. You know, this is more of the stuff that I know, where it's like the product is the consumer and the customer is the advertisers, even though people think it would be the other way around. It's very much set up the case where, but just the degree to which they were going to try to engage people, like literally using like, you know, sort of advanced psychological tactics that like casinos use and that other addictive things will use to try to entice people to enter and stay and just recreate these behavior patterns and things like that. I thought that was all really interesting. I mean, and kind of dark.
Yeah. And so Jaron Lanier, he has a book called Delete Your Social Media, and he says something in there which is if the thing you're using on the internet is free, then you're most likely the product.
Yeah. and that's very, they say that as well, which is like a very insightful way of looking at it.
Yeah,
you know?
Was Jaron Lanier in this documentary?
I think so. I don't know. Maybe. Who is he?
He's like,
there's a lot of people.
Yeah, he wrote a book on it, and he's like one of the, I don't know, people who's a big proponent of like fuck social media. There was this experiment done on rats, I want to say, a long time ago, where they would give the rats a like button, and they could push the button and they would get a treat, right? And when they set it up in such a way that every time the button was pressed, a treat would come out, the rats would like just press it when they wanted a treat. But when they did it in such a way where when you press the button, a treat might come out or it might not come out, so it was random, the rats would like obsessively press it. Because like apparently dopamine is like one of the things you like the most, right? It's like your brain, when dopamine is triggered, you're like, oh, sick. And when dopamine is expected and you get it, it's good. But when dopamine is gotten randomly, it's the best. And that's why I think it's the notification thing on Facebook was designed in that way, where like you'll constantly log in because you won't know whether or not you have a notification, and it's kind of random in that way. And then like when you do have it, it's like the dopamine hit is so much bigger.
You know, I'd say I was always one step ahead on the social media thing by accident, but just because, like, you know, I'm sure you get the same thing too, where you just have a lot of followers or whatever. So my notifications are off on everything, and they've always been, because it would just be too crazy on my phone. The only thing I get notifications for are like text messages and emails, unfortunately. So I am still hooked a little bit, but I mean, I don't enjoy social media necessarily. I do it, and I'm assuming it's the same for you. You kind of have to. Like, our businesses revolve around it. Now they're sort of inextricably linked. So, you know, they would not fundamentally function without them. I'm sort of locked into this thing, and I sort of see that's why that movie was so unnerving for me, because it's like kind of watching this thing which you know is terrible for you and that you can't really escape from it. I don't think anyone really can escape from it. I think the person that you're talking about, is he like this sort of like hippie looking dude with dreads like this?
Yeah. That's him.
Okay, he's definitely in there, and he was like, even at the end, he was like, I know I'm not going to convince most people, but even if I convince a few, I'm like, that's good. And like the awareness is the other half. It's like, it's one thing to be a victim of this and not even be aware of what's happening. If you're still a victim of it, but at least you understand the algorithms and the patterns and the things that are happening, and you have an awareness of that, at least that's one degree of sort of protection, because you may try to be a bit more careful in how you what you're intaking from it.
Yeah. So I did a thing a while ago, because I understand like the way the dopamine shit is working, and how going to social media and seeing a thing is like giving me dopamine. So I spent like a couple of days a few years ago just going through like my entire Instagram list of people who I follow, and just muting all of their accounts, and then going through my entire Twitter followers and muting everyone there, and then going through my entire Facebook friends and muting everyone there too. So like because like one thing you can do is you can get those feed blockers, like it's an extension for Chrome or whatever. But I was noticing that like when I'd put the feed blocker on my computer and not on my phone, I would just end up checking it on my phone and doom scrolling on my phone. And then I would notice that, there was just like one way or another I would get around it. So I was like, this is the only way that I can get around having a feed at all, and not unfollowing everyone, because then I'll have to have a bunch of awkward conversations where people are like, why'd you unfollow
So
me?
basically you have no feed anymore for anything, right?
Yeah. And no matter what device I check it on, it's like that.
Oh, interesting.
Put in like a lot of days worth of effort.
That's the next level. What I did was I customized my feed. So like I have a habit of just blocking anyone. There's like a lot of like negativity on social media. So I just block those people, or I just not block, or I just remove them from my feed, rather, like unfollow or whatever. And I find that my feed is mostly positive, and it's mostly just car stuff at this point.
Yeah, we should talk about cars, man. So like, I don't think people, like, I know people know that you're into cars, but I didn't realize like how sick being in a car what was the one that we went in? Was it a Ferrari or a Lamborghini?
Lamborghini.
Yeah. Dude, that shit was insane.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I will say I've gotten quite a bit faster since we last went. Why
would you want to go faster than that?
I don't know. Maybe it's that dopamine thing, Maybe it's like,
I think that's an adrenaline thing, actually.
Well, maybe, but I'm sure it's linked. I feel good in that car. You definitely get adrenaline, but like.
So two things I realized, or that I didn't realize beforehand, is one, when you're in a car going that fast around a corner, it's like a core workout, because you have to like hold your torso up, because it's just throwing you around.
Yeah, you'll be tired by the end of the day.
Yeah, like there's a fucking handle in the car on the passenger side to hold on to for this reason.
I call it the oh shit handle.
Yeah. And secondly, I don't think people realize like how it feels to be in a Lamborghini with that much pickup and like that much like how it just sticks to the road around corners and shit. I don't think people realize like how insane that feels to be.
It's a pretty insane feeling. So I mean, I'd say there's a group of people, and for a while I was pretty apprehensive about people even knowing that I had that car, because it sends the wrong message. And Lamborghinis tend to be also a car that's like a status thing, or like a way to flex on people. But the one I got in particular, the Huracan Performante, is really a driver's car, funny enough. And one of the things that it can do in particular is take a corner in a pretty ridiculous way, in a way that most cars cannot, which is why I opted for that car, specifically, and why I was sort of lusting after it. It was like what it could do around a corner is pretty much like a next level kind of thing, But yeah, like I think until people are in the, what's funny is like you can post videos from inside the car and people will be like, oh, looks like you're cruising. Like it doesn't look that fast.
Yeah, you don't really understand until you're in it.
And then you don't feel the G-forces, and the G-forces are real, because we were pulling over a G every corner, So that's like basically like you're sitting on yourself in every corner, you know? So that's why you're getting that core workout. And, you know, now I'm going a little faster. It's like, you just want to see what the car can do safely. You know, it's an exhilarating thing if you have like roads that you can take advantage of. And in some ways, like, I feel like I'm actually using the car for what it was built to do. I am pushing it, you know, especially these days, close to its limit. And, you know, I would never judge anyone for just buying the car for the looks. You know, it's a stunning looking car, and it does, if you're into the social stuff and into that side of things, you know, it's a good car for that, I suppose. But like, for me, like, it's like all compromises are justified for what that thing can do on a good road or track or whatever. And, you know, if you have access to that, I feel like, you know, you get this machine and then you're actually using it to its full potential. You're not just letting it sit in the garage or let it be like pretty in front of a restaurant, you know, valet parked or whatever.
What is the process for buying a car like that? 'Cause I imagine it's not the same as like, so the process I've bought every one of my cars with is like, I literally go on the internet to like carsales.com or some shit and like find some like secondhand GMC Envoy or like a Subaru Forester or something, and then I'm like, all right, yeah, this is $3,000. This looks like it'll last a year or two. This looks good. Cool. And then I buy it. And
I mean, it can be as simple as that. What are we spraying?
My cat always tries to paw at my speaker cones.
Oh, so that's not good.
I don't.
And those are the barefoots?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I this is my like little gun. I don't actually have to spray her anymore. I just have to pick it up and point it at her, and then she's like, all right, no, we're good, we're chill.
Oh, those poor barefoots.
They're fine. They haven't actually been messed up at all by her, but yeah, I have to be careful.
You do have to be careful. Those are expensive speakers. So
yeah, I imagine you don't just like go onto a website and be like, I'm gonna buy this car, and then give them whatever.
So you could. The thing about buying a car is it can be very simple. I say I'd probably overcomplicate it for a number of reasons, but I am an enthusiast and I do like to get good deals on things. And you know, at the end of the day, a car is a depreciating asset. So I understand that like spending money on cars is an irresponsible thing to do. You know, it's not a financially responsible thing ever.
Yeah, like,
you know, my dad's an economist. He hates that I buy these cars.
Yeah, so if you buy a Lambo for like $300,000, like what's it worth a year later?
Well, that depends. That depends a lot, you know, like on which one it is. And I do a lot of research on this. So, you know, for example, a Lambo that's worth $300,000, maybe a year later might be worth $270,000, $280,000. Now that seems like a lot of money lost. If you look percentage wise, you know, that's not too bad, but you know, it's just, you have to think about this stuff up front. If you get a McLaren, could be worth $200,000, you know? So different cars will lose different values. So this is where I say I get very sort of obsessive with that side. I figure if I'm going to be irresponsible, I might as well try to do it as responsibly as possible. So step one, I learn everything I can about the market. By the time I bought the Huracan, I knew everything about the market. I knew where it was at 6 months before, maybe even a year before, and where it was there. So I was always trying to plot the depreciation, and that way I could sort of calculate like how much I could expect to lose, right? And then if you showed me like 3 pictures, I could tell you like pretty much every option it had, and I knew what options I wanted. I knew which ones probably would help with the value and which ones did not count for a damn thing, you know? And then at that point, you know, then you have to find the car, which could take a while with these because it's like they're rare. So you want to find the spec you like. I buy them used. I don't buy these new because let someone else take the hit. These cars will depreciate more in that first year and a half, right? Let someone else take the hit. But yeah, like once you find the car, then you could just go and you know, it could be as simple as you just show up with a check for the cash and you pay it, right? Or what I like to do, since money is so cheap now, is I like to finance it. And you gotta be careful with this stuff because there are people who will look at financing almost like a credit card or something. They're like, okay, well, but in the bad way of using a credit card. It's like, well, I don't have the cash for this car and I can't afford this car, but I can afford the monthly payment. You know, and they're like, okay, well then I can have a Lamborghini or Ferrari or whatever in my garage if I pay this much a month, and I think I can swing that. But they don't have the cash. They maybe have enough for a down payment and then the monthly payments. And that's, you know, I'm not going to say don't do that, but that's a very risky game that you're playing there. And it will also mean that you're paying more for the car because you're paying the car plus interest. What I like to do is I think I got a loan at like 3.24% on the Lambo, right? So now instead of paying cash, I could take all the liquidity that I freed up by not paying cash, by just putting the down payment in and making the monthly payments, and invest it. And I can beat 3.24 in my sleep. Anyone can. You can beat that just by putting it in a S&P 500
like a
index fund.
stock or something. Yeah.
Like the literal safest stock that it's the top 500 companies. It's like, they're not going out of business. Even if one does, you've got 499. But yeah, Apple's not going out of business. Netflix isn't, Facebook, all these companies, and they perform well. You can at least count on like 5 to 6%. But lately, the stock market's been crushing it.
Yeah, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, right. So of course, there's a risk. It's all unpredictable. But like, I'm assuming that you're doing a 6-year term, or not 6 year, sorry, a 60-month. So that's like a 5-year term. I think they even have a 72-month term. So what I always look is for that delta of like the lowest interest payment with the longest term, if you plan on keeping it that whole time, because then you could just beat it every year and you'll actually pay less money than cash. Plus, if you invest well, you might start to make money against it. So right now, as things stand on the Lambo, I'm pretty much at the break-even point. I might even, if I were to sell it right now, I might even net a little bit, even accounting for insurance and running costs and whatever. But that's just because I got lucky because the stock market did really well this year, and I also made a really risky investment that's kind of paying off. But yeah, I mean, like that's my sort of philosophy behind it. And then, I could clickbait, have a free Lamborghini for a bunch of years, So and this is also with the mentality that most people are buying these cars are not keeping them for more than like a couple years. They usually swap them out at the latest every 3 years.
You say when you clickbait, you mean like sell that information on how to do it to other people?
No, I'm just saying like it sounds like here's how I got a free Lamborghini, right? And I'm sure there are people who sell this information. I'll just tell you, like it's pretty simple, but you need to have the at least most of the capital. You need to have some money left over to invest against it. If you're putting all your money into paying the financing, then you're paying the interest and then you're paying more for the same car, which I refuse to do. I want to get a good deal. And so this is the thing is I want to get in at a good price and then calculate like where my exit point will be. And then I'll know how much I lost. And that's how much I have to earn against it. But then I got kind of lucky. There's the weirdest thing that's going on right now. And it's not really going to affect me because I'm not going to sell the car right now. But COVID created a weird luxury bubble. And I think it's because half the people, lost everything, and that sucks, which created stimulus opportunities. But then the other half either stayed the same or are making more money. I bet business is booming for you right now. And
it's doing okay, actually. I wouldn't say booming. I mean, it's doing, I think, about this. Like, COVID hasn't affected me,
right?
But I don't think it's doing like better.
But that's amazing, right? Like this worldwide pandemic that has destroyed businesses is not negatively affecting you.
Well, I should restate before we go any further. It hasn't affected my online businesses. It's obviously affected my shows.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that goes without saying. Same here. But like, our merch sales are up, and the streams are up. It's like there's like honestly, like it's not been so bad for the businesses. Anything that's sort of manufacturing does get affected, unfortunately, but all the digital stuff does well. But then you also have access to like low interest rates on loans. So it's creating this bubble where a lot of people are like, oh, maybe now's the time to buy this thing. And then you actually get like bidding wars on housing. There's like crazy bidding wars going on. Like you'd think housing would be at its lowest. Nope. It's in a bubble right now. There's all these interesting luxury bubbles happening. Cars are up, luxury cars especially. Like you're looking at certain cars. The Lambo just gained 15 to 20K in value. So jump back up close to what I paid for it. Again, I don't care because I want to keep the car. But if I were to sell it now, yeah, probably with the stuff I've invested against it, I probably would be positive at this point. I probably would make a little bit of money by having gotten the car. Of course, the opportunity cost and where my dad would get mad is he's like, you could have just invested all that and made way more, but I wouldn't have the happiness that car brings me. So again, irresponsible, but I try to do it responsibly.
Yeah, I would say that seems pretty responsible. I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem like you're risking anything. It seems like, I mean, obviously from an economist's perspective, yeah, it's always going to seem dumb. Because
when your dad's an economist, anything other than investing money is dumb. And he loves housing. So it's like, oh, you should be buying a house or whatever. And I'm like, no. I mean, I already have like a place in DC that I own, and that place costs me money. So, it's not that simple anymore. I think the housing thing, I have another little rant prepared for you, but I think the housing thing is also a bit of a, at my most charitable, I think it's just boomers trying to give good advice to us for what worked for them.
Well, actually, I heard something, sorry to cut you off, but like I heard something the other day about like how boomers who like spent shitloads of money on stuff like say dining room tables, right? Who thought like, oh yeah, we'll pass this down through like generations. It's like this super expensive piece of furniture. Well, now all the millennials are like trying to live minimally and have like as little shit as possible basically. So they're like basically having to give away all this expensive shit for free at this point because no one will take it. Dude,
it is so funny that you say that because that is literally like, this has become one of my new things to add. I told you I was real busy. This is one of my new stresses in my life. I'm trying to help my parents manage this move because they're trying to, they have this big house that we grew up in Bethesda. And I'm like, you guys don't need a big house. You should live closer to your grandkids and live in a small condo. And like, it'll be nice, and you won't have stairs and you really don't need much space. It'll be less to clean. And they're going for it. So then they have this house full of shit and they're like, so do you want any of this stuff? And I'm like, most of it, no. And even some of the stuff I want, like, okay, you've got this beautiful dining table, but I don't have space for that. I don't do dining tables, like,
yeah, it's like millennials just all eat on the couch and shit anyway.
Yeah. And I'm going to take their couch. Maybe it barely fits, but it's like, it's a nice couch. Mine's wrecked, but that's the only reason why. If my couch was working, I'd be like, no, sorry. It's a really, really nice couch. Cause they're like, yeah, we'll keep it forever. But it probably won't fit in their next place. And it's, it's barely going to fit in mine. So that's a very real thing. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm trying to minimalize all my shit right now. I'm actually selling all of my synths because I'm just like,
really?
Yeah, I'm just done with hardware. Like, or I'm
sell me your rack.
Yeah, you want it?
Yeah,
sure.
$30
and
a Lambo ride.
All right. Now we're getting somewhere.
I don't know. I always wanted to get into modular. Okay, before we get sidetracked on the modular stuff, because you could teach me all about that in a second. I did want to say on the housing stuff, I do think that there's a weird thing going on because like I look at my parents and the house that they bought and how much it's worth now, and like that happened to all the boomers and whatever. So of course they'll go and say their house is worth like 4 or 5 times what they paid for it. Of course they'll say like, yeah, invest in that. And that's being charitable as well because that's not accounting for inflation and it's not accounting. Yeah. It's not. but like let's just go ahead and say yeah, it's worth that much. That's a great investment. But like, truthfully, most of the places that you're going to invest in now, I mean, this is not true everywhere, but you can't be anywhere sort of central or cool. Anywhere that's developed and nice is already going to be at the top. So you're paying to live there. So that's not an investment. Really, the best investments would be like if you were to invest in a rental property in a not so great area that it will eventually become good. And my sister made one of those investments in DC. Was it Columbia Heights right before it turned, and then moved out because someone got shot right in front of her place, and like she had a 1-year-old child, so that she moved out. And yeah, that place was worth way more the next year. But like that's kind of like for most areas, what you'd have to do. Of course, in places like Texas, like if the beauty is that you could be like 20, 30 minutes out of town and get some really good investments, but who knows how fast those will grow. So it's not the same market. But as I was saying, like I think a lot of the last generations are like, this worked really well for us, so you should do that. But I think housing is actually a lot more complicated. And generally speaking, you can go online and find this like rent versus buy calculator. And if you honestly put the information in, then you can get the answer. Because usually it'll be something like, well, unless you plan on living here for 4 years, you're not even going to break even by buying,
Right. Like surely people have worked this out like to pretty much a science at this point, right? My friend Ben Jordan, the flashbulb, he used machine learning to figure out how much houses around his area in Atlanta were appreciating in value.
Wow.
And then he bought one in a specific area that now is worth like way more, and he's only owned it for a couple of years.
Yeah. And does he live there or did he rent it out or what?
He lives there, but
okay.
Yeah, it's crazy that even machine learning can do that. He also told me I probably need to like weave the story in such a way that doesn't give much information away, because I don't know how much I should talk about it. But basically he said he used machine learning, or maybe he didn't do it. Maybe he said you can't use machine learning in a court case because nobody knows how it works. Like for instance, machine learning can figure out when someone's like going to have a heart attack if you give it the right data, right? But nobody knows like how it can tell that it's that
they were kind of getting into this in that Social Dilemma movie, how like, people are talking about like, well, when AI comes, it's like AI's here. It's and we all use machine learning whether we realize it or not, or we're all part of this experiment. But the problem is that because it adapts and because it's such a vast, complex algorithm, there's not really one person or even one group of people who really understand how it works. They might have understood how part of it worked at one point in time, but it's kind of already started to evolve on its own, and no one's really got their hands on how it works. So I definitely understand that sentiment. It's its own thing, and we don't entirely know how. No one really knows how it works anymore. At least you may know the fundamental concepts behind it, but now it's more like a tool that's used that we don't fully understand. This alien. I think
that goes for like everything though. There was this podcast I listened to called iPencil, and basically it was talking about like all the steps for creating a pencil, and you need someone who like creates the machine. And then like somebody who creates all the parts of the machine, and then like all of those parts are created by like hundreds of different people, and then like to make like the little bit of rubber on the end of the pencil is like people are getting like elements and fucking materials from everywhere, sending them all to like different plants to be processed in different ways, and then all eventually put into this one place to like crush it into a tiny bit of rubber that goes on the end of the pencil. Like creating the letters, like super complicated, creating like the wooden tube that is like hollowed out. You need a machine to like hollow it out, and it kind of talked about like every specific component of pencil creation. That's
a podcast.
It was a podcast, yeah.
I gotta find that. That sounds fascinating. I love stuff like that because I'll think about that. I remember like Nolly, like our ex-bassist and one of my business partners, like, and best friends, like we used to like get on these like things of like we just pick something random, like, oh, the knob on this amp, like someone designed that, someone had to like invent that, that didn't that just wasn't. It feels like it was always there, and you could just grab it from a parts bin. Someone designed the parts bin, Like it's very much that thing. And in all of these cases, it's almost crazy, like how much goes into like a pencil and probably how much it costs to make one. But luckily it was profitable enough to make a billion of them for very little cost.
When you scale it. Yeah. But I think the point and like what this podcast was trying to make you realize is if you can take something as simple and one-dimensional as a pencil and break down how complicated that is, then it makes you think about the rest of the world super differently, because then you're like, holy shit, like how fucking hard was it to create like like a can of LaCroix then, like, or how hard was it to create like a like a computer monitor or like a speaker? It's like way more intense than a pencil.
Probably it like every one of these things has some insanely fascinating story behind it, like some chance or some like crazy connection that happened that they're like, oh, well, what if we do this or that, and it kind of changed everything. It's kind of like a materialistic Sonder I became aware of this term because of that band TesseracT. They're friends of ours. They put out an album called Sonder, and I was like, what does that mean? And it basically is like that feeling. It's a cool expression. It's that feeling of knowing that like everyone has as complex and rich and detailed a life as you have. Like everyone in the world. It's like an overwhelming feeling of that. So you're almost describing like in a material sense, like Sonder in a material sense, where it's like, yep, even a simple pencil has the most complicated life behind it, you know?
It's like arguably even maybe potentially more complicated than anyone's individual life.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty nice stuff. Real quick. So why do you want to get rid of the module? Have you not been using it that much, or you find that it can't really do stuff that you just can't do already on the DAW, or what?
So the more shit that I get rid of, I've noticed that the happier I feel for some reason. I'm like, oh, cool. I have like less shit to worry about. Yeah. And it's also like sitting right in the middle of my room. And this room is like a super nice room with a big window and shit. And it's like, if this was just not here, it'd feel super open. And like the whole house would then feel like very open. There's just no good like place for it. And also, I barely use it. Like, so it's really just taking up space in the middle of the room for like no reason. And I'm actually keeping some of it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy these things called happy ending racks by a company called Tip Top, and they're basically like a sort of like just a set of rails that you can mount into a rack, and then you can have your modules there. So I have a Argosy desk with the like rack mountable things in the desk. So I'm gonna just like mount 2 happy ending racks and then have 160 HP of modules there,
and that'll be enough.
Yeah, and then it'll just be like mounted in my desk, like out of the way, not in the middle of the room, and it's gonna be like maybe 50% of what I've got now. Okay. And it definitely will be enough. What I'm going to buy another module called an Expert Sleepers ES8. And basically what this is like a complete I/O system between your computer and your modular system. And then I'm pretty much just going to keep all of the outboard processing units of the modular system. So I'm not going to keep like oscillators, and I'm not going to keep like voltage controlled amps or like envelope generators.
So none of the synth parts, basically. Those exactly, you'll just do digitally.
Yep, but what I am going to keep is like the plasma drive distortion unit and the filters and like the samplers and all that kind of stuff. So then I can send shit out of Ableton into there, drive the entire rack via CV tools in Ableton, and yeah. So it's kind of just going to be like an outboard processing unit.
Kind of doing something similar to that with like this little pedal board. You can't even see it. This little pedal board I've got like in the rack here.
And you just
kind of a pain in the ass to get it to work, but like
Oh, man, speaking of like outboard shit, I messaged you that one time on Facebook and then deleted a ton of messages when I figured it out. But there's some cool shit you can do with that radial DI, where you can like send. So basically, I don't know if you do this as well. I think you do, where you have like the radial DI and you sort of run your guitar into that cleanly into your DAW, and then also you run it through the Axe Effects and record the distorted signal at the same time. And what I've noticed doing that is once you get the clean signal into Ableton, because it's so much like cleaner, it's not just a big sausage of distortion, it's got like nice transients and shit. You can edit it really nicely with warping and like cut all the little silences out and like get the rhythm like super perfect, and then reamp it through the Axe Effects, and it sounds so fucking good.
Yeah, so actually, that's what I used to do. That's what we did on Periphery 4, for example. And what I'd do is I'd set it up as a parallel track. So it would always be recording and editing both at once, right? But then you can use the transients because like you say, like the distorted track just looks like a big sausage of distortion. But you can use your transient as like the guidelines. It's like, okay, well, like this is where I cut, this is where I move it to. So it makes it way easier to edit and slide things around. But lately what I've been doing for my solo album is I've just been tracking into like the neural the neural amps and my Tone Forge my JST Tone Forge amp sim on the computer, because then you just capture the DI and it's then you can reamp it later. So the plan is to reamp it later, but like for capturing it, like they're good enough quality and you can get a good mix going, but like you're basically hearing how it will sound reamped, making sure that it's kosher there, and then it should translate sort of one-to-one. And the beautiful thing about reamping is like if there are any sort of hard cuts, like especially if you have distortion, it just it just smooths all that stuff out. Like crossfade. You don't need to crossfade. You could just cut stuff in and it'll just sound like you just played it.
Yeah, it gets masked. That's one thing about like dubstep as well. It's super easy to mix. A lot of people who write electronic music are writing this kind of like softer stuff, right? Like house is like kind of softer and cleaner, and IDM stuff and experimental music is like, it's all soft and clean and has like very nice transients, and it's very hard to mix. But with dubstep, you literally never turn anything down. You only turn shit up. And just like the more shit you turn up and push into the limiter, the more it just like squashes it together and sounds good. Right.
It just covers everything up. Yeah, and it's funny you say it's easier to mix. I have a couple electronic songs on the solo album I'm working on, and I'm not good at mixing.
Well, you might be thinking about it too traditionally, because you would never do that with metal. Like you would never just like keep putting elements in and just throwing.
No, like, metal is the opposite. Is how do we cut stuff out for everything to fit?
Exactly.
And I'm aware it's different, but it's also, I'm not as, I'm sure electronic sound design is second nature to you in the same way that like mixing metal and rock is. There's a lot of stuff I don't even think about anymore, Yeah,
well, it's just very untraditional. Like I taught the sound design course at Berkeley last year, and it was, what I noticed when I was trying to teach people is everything I would tell them, they'd be like, well, in our mixing class, our mixing teacher told us never to do that. And I was like, yeah, well, this is sound design class. It's different. So it's like literally take everything your mixing teacher said and do the opposite, and you have sound design class.
I've never had a mixing teacher. I've always kind of done it by ear and just learned from friends. So like I'd learn from you and from whatever. But if there's ever something I've learned is that there's no rules with this. I mean, there's guidelines like, you probably don't want your mix to clip, but maybe you do. Maybe that's an effect. There's guidelines because they got to teach something, and there's sort of, if you use them as like guidelines so that you understand where the status quo is at and that it's totally okay to break them to sort of experiment, that's fine. But I think people sometimes get a little stuck. It's like, well, no, this is the only way to do it. It's like, dude, there's about 1,000 ways to skin this cat. That's why it's an art form.
Well, so I've been recently getting massively into chess, and I've been getting lessons from like masters and stuff like that. And Garry Kasparov, who was like the world champion for a long time, has a good quote, which is to be an expert at something, you need to know all of the rules. But to be a master at something, you need to know exactly when the right time is to break those rules.
Right. That's a good way of saying.
Yeah, it applies in chess a lot, actually, because it's like you need to know all the fundamentals and principles to like get even close to the master level. But then to be like a world champion, you need to know exactly when it's fine to do shit that you're not supposed to do in chess. Like
that's a great quote. And I mean, I'll say even like with like the metal stuff, like we're dealing with styles of music that are very unconventional. Even the electronic stuff, it's like mixing books made 20 years ago, 10 years ago even, wouldn't be able to account for some of the stuff that we were doing, because whether it's plugins, processing power techniques, or whatever, right? But like even the way that like I approach the metal mixes, and this is something that Nolly taught me, and now I swear by it, which is top down mixing, which is like you start with like you do the cardinal sin, you mix into a master bus that's already going. And that won't even be your final master bus, because we'll send it off to a mastering engineer.
Well, this is the thing, is like a lot of people pull me up on this too when I'm streaming. They're like, what, you write into a limiter? And it's like, yes, because eventually it's going to get limited. You're not going to release it unlimited. Right. So you want to know how your shit's going to react when it hits a limiter.
Doing things. The limiter is chopping your transients in a really specific way. It's not something that you could just account for on the front end and hope it works out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why a lot of people, I think, have this issue where they do a really nice mix into not a limiter, and then at the end they take the limiter off, send it to mastering, and then they're like, "What happened?" And it's like, well, you didn't account for like the fact that the limiter is going to destroy all your transients, so you didn't put enough transients in the first place.
And it's even more crazy. Like there's one of the things that I love a really punchy snare. But the snare is just about the first thing that'll get destroyed in a metal mix, because it's sitting right in the mid-range where the distorted guitars are eating it alive. If you have a grindy bass, that's eating it alive. And the vocals are eating, and basically every element is sitting right in the space that a beautiful, nice, punchy snare would sit in. So you have to get creative if you want it to really punch through. And like, one of the things that we do is I actually compress it to be super pokey. So if you were to hear it without the limiter, you'd be like, oh, like that's way too much like top end transient on that snare. And then I actually create the sustain through a parallel compression bus that's just smashed. That because it's smashed emphasizes the sustain and has very little transient on the snare, and also has the kick going through it and other kit elements, so they're sort of bouncing and pumping against each other, right? And then I have a compressor set, an SSL style compressor that's basically just reading the snare. So I'm having it actually high pass and ignore mostly the kicks, because a lot of what you get with these bus compressors is they're reacting to the kick and snare, and you get really pumpy mixes. But actually all it's doing is it ducks the mix every time it hits a hard snare hit. So that way that snare gives it the illusion of power, because it's just ducking everything, right? And then then the limiter, it's just the last thing. The limiter is the thing that will soften up that snare transient. So the limiter is set in a very specific way. I have a limiter I like to use, and I'll dial it in for the mix. And when I go to the mastering engineer, I'll tell them what I'm using, and I'll give them reference. I'll be like, this is what I'm trying to recreate, and they'll do a better job. But that is actually what's chopping that pokey snare, and then the snare sounds perfect. But it's like, these are the hoops you have to jump through if you want to have a snare that cuts through the mix that isn't just layered with one-shot samples or something,
Yeah. So like you were saying, the snare sits right in the same range as the vocals and the guitar and the bass and all that. Have you tried putting a multi-band compressor on literally everything except the snare, and then just having that mid-range duck every time the snare hits?
Yeah, I do that on the guitars, and I do that on the bass. I do multi-band compression, but the problem is that you can create a mix that pumps in a very weird way. You have to do it very, very strategically. And this is the thing, is like pumping and ducking are hallmarks of electronic music, having the side chain, kick and snare and all that stuff is literally used as an effect. In metal, that is not, you want to do it in a way where it sounds like it's not there. Yeah, you want it to just sound like everything is punching through. So that's where you got to be really careful. And what I found is I do that. I am doing that currently, but you have to be so careful with your application. You have to use so little to where it's almost not a benefit. And it just, in the grand scheme of things, is slightly better than without it. But it's not like a game changing thing. It's literally, a metal mix is how can I clean up just this little bit here and this little bit there and create a bit more space here and there. And it's all about taking away. You're never adding shit. You're always just taking away. So that's why doing the electronic stuff is really fun. And it's a completely different mindset. And I'm not good at it, but I'm going to learn how to do it by doing it. So maybe I'll get some of your tips, Yeah,
I'd be happy to show you some stuff. The other thing with metal is kind of while you're making it, you're sort of constrained to the fact that this will one day be performed live, so it has to be playable. Whereas with electronic music, you can kind of just be like, oh yeah, fuck it, I'll do whatever I want, because it's always going to be playable, because I'm just going to play the actual.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that. This is why I'm glad I have side projects, and I've got and the solo project, but I've got my side project with Mark, Haunted Shores, which is our crazy death metal, tech black metal project. And that stuff is really hard to play. I suppose if we ever had to play it, we probably could figure it out. But it's kind of written without that responsibility. Because, when I'm doing the Periphery stuff, it's we're going to have to play this. This stuff needs to be playable. It can't be purely compositional. And we straddle that line, because there's a lot of stuff where I'm well, this sounds awesome, so we're just going to have to figure it out. And then you spend a lot of time practicing just so you can play this one part that sounded the way you want it to sound, but it's actually pretty difficult to play, or not really conducive to guitar, because it's something I composed for virtual violin or for synth or something. And it's just, these are the notes I wanted to hear. And wow, it's super awkward to play on guitar, but I doubled it with guitar. So here we go.
You can't just adapt it for live like Lars Ulrich does with the one double kicks or whatever.
Ooh, that is not a path that we've gone down yet. And I'd like to avoid that if possible, to each their own. But that's not, with that said, I think when you go to a Periphery show, the understanding that we have with our fans is our studio albums are concepts. This is something that we wanted to write. This is the ideal way that it should be. It's a composition. And then the live show is a live show. And we're going to play these songs. We're going to recreate them as best as we can. But if you want to hear the album, go listen to the album. This is where it's very different from electronic shows, where you're basically hearing the album. Like I'm sure there's differences and there's stuff that you can do, but you're hearing like album quality and all that stuff live. Like live bands don't sound as good as the album in metal, you know? It takes quite a bit of mixing for that to be the case. So like it's kind of this understanding. It's a different thing. It's a live energy. We're jumping around. We're messing about, having a good time. We're not playing clinical performances, you know? So there are screw ups and there are changes and there's differences and it's a lot more raw. And that's sort of what you go to a live show for. And then you can listen to the album. I guess with like EDM, it's much more like one and the same, you know?
Well, for EDM, you don't go to the show for the awe of the performers. Like,
right.
you go to a metal show to watch people play shit that could very easily be fucked up, and they're skating on thin ice the entire time.
Right,
And that's why it's
right.
awesome to watch, because you're like, oh, this is so like, you know, they're on the edge. Like,
Yeah, it could go off
like,
the rails at any point,
exactly.
and it does sometimes.
Exactly, like this could go so wrong, and that's why it's like fun to watch, because it's so fuck upable. But like with electronic music, it's really like you're going to watch a movie, you know? Like I said this to Deadmau5 once. I was chatting with him when we played at Red Rocks together, and I was like, so do you just like kind of play the same set with the same visuals, the same every night? And he's like, yeah, what do you fucking, like, you don't go to it and expect a different movie the second time? Like,
You know, there's a lot about the EDM scene that I don't know or understand. I was never raised around. I appreciate the music and I love it. And I try to dabble in it myself because I'm so fascinated with it. But like, as far as the inside and the scene and like the musicians and the dynamics of it, it's so different. It's so different from rock and metal and stuff like that. And then like, you've like concisely explained a few things to me that like were so alien. Like, for example, like the fact that you will play other people's songs in your set, right? And not even necessarily tell them that you're playing another song, you know? Like,
yeah.
If I were to
like
play,
most of the time you won't tell them you're playing another person's song.
So and it'll be like a contemporary. It won't be like a classic song that everyone knows from like 20 years. It's not like covering a Metallica song where it's like everyone will know. This would be like us playing like a Pliny song or a TesseracT song in our set and not telling anyone and letting people think that we're playing it. Like,
do you understand? Do you understand the concept of a dub plate?
What's that?
A dub plate is like an unreleased song that one of your friends gives you that's like finished, and it's like a song that they plan to release eventually, but it's not released yet. So like DJs will play a lot of dub plates in their set, which is so like partially the reason you'll come to like a show of mine or whatever is to kind of hear a bunch of shit that you wouldn't be able to hear any other way, because like my friends have given me a bunch of tunes, right? And likewise for their shows as well. Like you would go to watch them and they'd play like my tunes that aren't released yet and stuff like that.
Yeah, you see, that's such a crazy concept.
It would be more like if Pliny like showed you how to play a bunch of unreleased shit by them, and then
we
you
played it before his album was out. Dude, that would end friendships, you know? That would like that you'd be blacklisted. But like taking the simpler example, I asked you like, wait, so like they're cool with that? And you gave me the best answer. You were like, well, think of it this way. It's like, if you had a friend, you know how like you'll show someone like an artist that you discovered and you're all stoked about him? Like, yeah, I do it all the time. He's like, and then you're like, well, imagine doing that in a room full of people. I'm like, that's a great example. You know, it's like, here I am. I'm showing you guys. I'm showing like 1,000 people like this song I think is really sick. I'm like, I love that. I totally get it.
But
you know?
Not only that, you're not just showing it to them in the context of like, you know how you'll go down like a YouTube rabbit hole with your friends and they'll show you one thing and you're like, oh, it reminds me of this thing. And then you'll show them that thing. And then they should like, it's kind of like the thing that you're showing them is in context to the last thing that they just showed you, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with a DJ set. It's like you're putting it in context as well, because it's like not only are you showing them something you're super excited about, you're showing it to them in an order that you think it should be heard as well, so that they understand it in the same way that you understand it.
I mean, that only makes it better, of course. But it's amazing because like I remember like when I first sort of understood what was happening, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that. And after he explained it, I was like, I'm sold. That's great. That's a fucking awesome. And I like that. I like that. I guess like as you said, like when you highlight that, like the difference is like, I mean, really, we do very different things live. Like we're performing, and like you said, like part of the beauty of it is like, can we pull this off? And they're like, can they pull this off? You know, and then if we do, it's great for everybody. If we don't, it's rock and roll, whatever. But like in your case, like everyone knows you're not up there working hard. Like 99% of the hard work was put beforehand to make it so that this would be an amazing experience. So then you can also show in that moment some other work that was 99% done beforehand and would sound really cool. And because of that understanding, it like completely changes the rules or whatever, I guess whatever's socially acceptable.
It's a very different value system. Like you don't go to the shows for the same reasons, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to explore like the dynamics of that and the ripple effects of that. Because yeah, dude, like if I was showing my friends like a song that was on our upcoming album, then I heard that at a show, I saw a video of them playing it live, I'd be like, all right, get the lawyers, you know, like it would be so ugly, and it's kind of refreshing to hear that in a context where I'm like, that's sick, you know?
Do you think in some ways that's why the electronic industry has sort of surpassed the metal industry in terms of like how big it is? Because I feel this way about the tech industry, right? Like what happened is like a bunch of people who were techies just made a bunch of shit, like really good tools that took them weeks to make. And they were just like, you know what, I'm just going to upload this to GitHub. Anyone can use this library free of charge. And as a result, it's like tech has just built on the shoulders of other techies so quickly that now it's by far.
If you think EDM is a tech genre as well, you know?
Well, I think in the sense that like people are willing to share and just do whatever they want, and there's no like real closed doors between people that much.
But a lot of these guys are programmers too, you know, and you have to have like an understanding of that. So it might be that same sort of mentality leaking through. They're like, well, just as I'd give you a plugin, here's a song or whatever, you know? Yeah.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is like the fact that everyone's so like open to sharing and playing each other's tunes and all of that kind of shit has just like allowed the shit to grow like exponentially. Versus...
I'm sure it's a factor. If I were to, as an outsider, make a couple observations, one, I mean, the problem with metal especially is that it's an abrasive style of music. And it's the kind of thing that a lot of people don't like or don't realize they would like.
So is dubstep though.
I feel like if we're talking about just in terms of pure abrasiveness, no, like they don't have distorted guitar. Like there's a lot of very unpleasant sounds and there's screaming. There's things that are like, I guess on like a largely subjective level, just not good sounds. And then there may be like contextualized and mixed in a way that makes them appealing if you understand it, right? But I think a good example of what I'm talking about is Meshuggah. A lot of people who will listen to their records or whatever will be like, this is absolute noise and garbage. But then if they see them live, will be like, that was life-changing. That was incredible. But very much like we were talking about, like the customer, right? Subscribers or whatever. It's like, these guys are not customers. Like they're not going to go check out Meshuggah unless someone drags them there, you know? And then they'll be like, wow, I had no idea. And that's the way I see metal being. Metal, the adoption is usually like someone sort of inducted into it. It's very tough to sell it, but it's something like you have a friend or whatever. It's like, whoa, what is that? That's interesting. Okay. And then maybe I'm a bit out of my comfort zone, but I'll check that out. Wow, that was actually really cool. Now I think I have the momentum to get to this on my own. I think electronic music, EDM, all that, just as a baseline, is a much more palatable sound. It's a very beautiful sound.
Like you can just end up in a club and like hear it by accident sort of thing.
Yeah, or think of it this way. If you have electronic music on in the background, no one is going to say a goddamn thing. If you have metal in the background, probably a lot of people will be like, turn that shit off. So right there, you've got this massive barrier to entry. And then second of all, just on an objective level, EDM shows sound phenomenal. You know, they are pushing the limits of the sound system. Like metal shows are about mitigating sonic disaster. Again, and you have a tenth of the tools and the time that you would have in the studio, and you have to do it live. And if you hear, like, all the proof you need is listen to a board mix, listen to an unmixed board mix of what is being mixed for the room coming out. It'll sound fucking terrible. But like, you know, you could then mix it to be better. But that is effectively what's coming out of the speakers. And you're sort of just trying to put together and make it sound good. EDM makes it sound like you've got the most expensive sound system. It is orders of magnitude better sounding. So already you're starting with a better bass line. Then you go there and you're like, I just felt bass that shook me in a way that I've never felt before. In the same way that like being in the Lamborghini made you feel feelings that you can't feel in other ways, there's things that you can experience like sonically and physically at an EDM show that are very tough to experience in any other place. Right. And you won't feel them at a metal show where like you're operating at like 30% of what like the PA can actually do because it's not a very good mix, right? So I think it's always got the advantage. It's got the mass appeal, and then the production. Production's huge. You can afford to put more in production than we can, and we're more about the live show and interacting and like the human aspect. And you know, we might be splitting hairs, but man, some of these, you know, I saw Dead Mouse with a cube, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like.
Yeah,
his
but
production
that's expensive,
value,
man. Like, so he's actually really smart about it. He owns the production company that has his cube, and when he's not using it, he rents all the LED walls out to other people.
Yeah, I mean that's extremely smart. And it actually reminds me a little bit of like the Rammstein model, and that's like a band that sort of like crossed over and does the show. I don't like Rammstein. I know a lot of people don't, and they're all like, you got to see them live. It's an experience, and everything's on fire, and the singer sings a song on fire. They own the pyrotechnics.
Wait, he sets himself on fire?
He sets himself on fire and sings on fire. He's like wearing one of those fire suits. And they own the pyrotechnic company as well and rent it out to other bands. So they're doing that same sort of thing. But it's an insane production. I'm sure it costs an insane amount of money. They do very well for themselves. They're like one of the biggest bands in the world and in Germany as well. But yeah, it's, you know, this is that's maybe the exception that proves the rule. It's a tough thing. And again, I don't think it's a comparison, but I think if you're just looking for data and some objective facts, I think there's a bunch of factors, but I'm sure your point does not hurt either. The fact that people are spreading it around and you might hear something and you'd be like, oh, what's that? You know, what's that? And it just creates awareness in a way that when you come to see a Periphery show, the only bands you'll be aware of are the opening bands.
So do you think you would be doing better as a band or worse as a band if at every Pliny show and every TesseracT show and every whatever show, like Animals as Leaders or whatever, they got on the mic and were like, hey, here's a new song from Periphery. Like they did a 50-day tour, and every show they played on that tour, they're like, here's a new Periphery song that's unreleased, we're going to play it for you. And like, you surely wouldn't be doing worse as a band, right? You'd be doing...
It's so hard to say because it's less...
I'm literally saying like multiple other bands are telling people about you.
It would just be such a culture shift. If the crowd was accepting of it, it would probably be a good thing. But like that's not a shift that could happen right now, because right now people will be like, what the fuck's going on? But like that's not what I signed up for. But I'm sure that would be a benefit. I'm sure if like we were starting from scratch and it's like, okay, this is the first metal show and this is the dynamic. Yeah, that could only help, as you said. So
a lot of, you're not obligated to get on the mic and say like, hey, here's an unreleased Mr. Bill tune or whatever. But a lot of people who play my tunes out do that.
Okay.
I don't.
Is there etiquette behind that? Is there like kind of an understood?
I mean, I don't get on the mic, but I mean, like if somebody films the thing and hits me up on social media and says, what is this? And I see the post, then I'll 100% tag the person whose tune it is if it's not mine. Okay. Let me ask you this. Has anyone just tried to claim someone else's song as their own? Oh, that happens all the time. But I mean, like, what happens then? What happens then? You don't really get that live. Like, no one plays somebody else's tune and goes like, "This is my new unreleased song." Like, okay. That doesn't happen. But like anything, you get plagiarism, right? Like where somebody will write a song and release it, and everyone will be like, that sounds awfully similar to this other song, and then there'll be a lot of questionable stuff. Like for instance, there was a Culprit song called it was with this guy called I can't remember. It starts with a Z. Zen, whatever. So Culprit wrote a song with some guy, and then this other guy called Dyro wrote a song that sounds literally identical to it, and there was like this huge thing between it. But I mean, Dyro, that makes sense. Dyro's song didn't get taken down, as far as I know. It's still up, and there was no like lawsuit over it or anything, so nothing happened. But I think that's just because Culprit decided he didn't want to start a lawsuit. But I'm sure it can hurt your cred at that point. You know, be like, hey. I mean, Dyro's pretty big, but yeah, I mean, at the same time, there's a bunch of Culprit fans. We've gotten that. We have that song Icarus Lives, and there have been a few bands that have popped up with like that first riff from Icarus Lives or some variation of it. Well, there's only so many like options, right? Like, I mean, there's 7 notes. There's a couple of time signatures that we like, and there's
you say that, and I'd say depending on the style, like if you're gonna do like campfire chords or like like basic 4-chord structure, that limits you. But like when you're talking about Icarus Lives, it's first of all a really long phrase. Second of all, it's very syncopated. So at any point, you could just change a couple things and make it different. So when it's like very similar, it sounds like intent, It's not like you accidentally stumble on it. And maybe, someone didn't realize that they had it stuck in their head and they thought it was an original thing.
Yeah, that's called cryptomnesia.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, when you like hear something and you forgot that you heard it and you don't know where it came from, but then you remake it. Like, happens a lot. I
mean, hell, I've done that before. Like I think it happens to everybody. You think like, oh, this sounds great. Oh, it doesn't sound great because I invented it. It sounds great because I liked it when I heard it.
It specifically happens a lot in comedy. Like stand-up comedy.
Yeah, yep.
People will hear like a concept or a joke or an idea, and then they'll think like, oh, that's a funny concept that I totally just thought of, and then like try and come up with their own
Absolutely. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen with music, but I actually think that we've sort of barricaded ourselves against that a little bit, just because like, with our style, like progressive metal or djent or whatever, it's like, it's all about like long phrases and syncopation and stuff like that. So it's not impossible to have things. And in some ways, a lot of it has the same vibe just because it's sort of, a lot of open note syncopated stuff, and that will sound similar. But to end up with a similar pattern, especially if there's some variation, like the riff in Icarus Lives is not just like open notes. So it's interesting. If I ever showed you some of these, you'd be like, oh, okay. Like that's kind of funny,
Right.
But we've never done. I think in some cases we'll just point it out and like our fans will rip them apart. But like we've never taken anyone to court, and there's no need to. It's like, well,
no one wins in court.
Like, it's like there's no point. It'll just let sort of the fans handle it. Like, and in one case there was a guy. I'd say this was like one of the more blatant ones because like the song, like he just took the first riff from the song and then the rest was just like this weird prog song. But like it was so specific. And I remember just thinking, like, why didn't you just change up a few more things, It could have been different. We wouldn't have recognized it. But it was like it was the first 2 riffs. And the second riff, again, is a very long phrase with very specific syncopation. And he'd matched everything, including like the feel on the drums.
So it was Icarus Lives, and what was the song that the person... what was the band?
So I think it was this guy called Neil Wakefield, and the song was called Digital Mind. And he basically got shamed. It was like a video. He got shamed into changing it. So I don't even think you can find it. Now the version has the first 2 sections are just different. Like he rewrote it. And it's it was funny because it was like the most egregious one we've ever seen. That one was like, that's not you forgot or like that was in the back of your mind. That was you trying to sneak it. You're in a different style. You thought no one would notice because it's so specific. It was like right on the money, and you just kind of changed some of the notes around, but the rhythms were exactly the same. The feel was exactly the same. It might have even been the same tempo. And then he changed it after he got shamed. So it was kind of like, but I don't care. We thought it was funny. We just thought it was hilarious because at the end of the day, it wasn't taking money out of our pockets. It wasn't messing with our business,
Yeah, someone like copying your shit is kind of like a form of flattery, really.
Exactly. I couldn't put myself in the mind of someone who would do that. I could understand like if it's like, like this little thing, like I heard it somewhere else, I put it in mine, and that's actually a ripoff. But like to actually like ape something, be like, okay, I'm going to take these 2 riffs in succession and copy them exactly into my song and hope no one notices. Like that does not work in my brain. Like, so I just thought, I was almost like fascinated by it,
Hey man, we've been talking for like 80 minutes.
Yeah. And I got to go anyways. Yeah. We could do another one of these. I always love talking to you.
Yeah. Likewise, man. I would love to do another one.
I mean, this is just what it's like when we hang out. It's just we're doing it and recording it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's good. It's good to get one of these recorded with you. I think people will find it hopefully interesting.
Yeah, hopefully. And if they don't, at least I had another good conversation with you.
Right.
But we can do it anytime, man. I'm around.
Sick. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
course, dude. Of course.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Mr. Bill podcast. These episodes are edited and uploaded by Robert Fumo of 303podpro.com. You can also support the show, get early access to episodes, and hear bonus content by going to patreon.com/Mr. Bill's Tunes and becoming a patron. Please rate and review on iTunes unless you're going to be a little shit about it. And all the links to my various platforms are at MrBillsTunes.com. Thank you.